birthday, Amy.
Oh, thank you.
By the time this is airing, it will no longer be really near Amy's birthday, but still happy birthday, Amy, because
Yeah.
it just
Yeah,
and
it might be your birthday at this point when this is
almost
going
it'll
up.
be like a week out, I think, still, but
Happy
right
birthday
in
to
the middle. Oh, thank you.
you.
Okay, well, I'm Olivia, in case you forgot.
And I'm Amy, in case you
And this
forgot.
is, in case
And
you
this
forgot, this
is
is Girls Gone Spooky.
woohoo,
Woohoo!
a spooky podcast.
A spooky podcast. Well, sweet Amy had a fun little birthday trip that was crashed by our friend COVID.
Typical, always at the wrong
Typical.
time.
Always. And we were debating the benefits of high cake to frosting ratio versus high
Mm-hmm.
frosting to cake ratio. I'm a high cake ratio girl. She's a high frosting
Yeah,
ratio girl.
the
So
opposite.
maybe that should be a poll in
Yeah,
in the week this episode comes out, because I feel like this is a highly debated topic.
I think you're
So,
right. But
right?
yeah, because as we're talking about this now, I'm also remembering that you like chocolate chip cookies without the chocolate chips. Isn't that
Love
right?
them. I love them.
So, and I would
I
rather
think
have chocolate chips with like a lace
Yeah,
of
you'd
cookie
rather
between
you'd rather
it.
die than have it
Yeah.
without the chips. I think it
Yeah.
comes from, I think my chocolate chip thing, because look, I love a chocolate chip cookie. I
Yeah.
think it stems from me having issues with acid reflux when I was
Uh-huh.
young. And so
Mhm.
I'm like, you know what? I can eat more of them if there are no chocolate chips, because I'm someone who, if I have one, I'll have 10. So
Yep.
here we are.
That's just smart.
Um,
It's
it's
just
just
smart.
smart. It's just
Yep.
efficient, you know?
Right.
So I don't know.
Know thyself.
Um, no, know thyself. That's exactly it. Um,
Hmm.
so this week's episode, I'm very excited about this week's episode because I think you have
Yeah.
like a pretty spooky one. I have like a really interesting mix of a bunch of different things.
Perfect.
But all within the theme of Saved by the Ghost.
Oh yeah.
Um, so shocking to me how many stories there are of these.
I
Like,
know. I'm
so many.
Yeah. And I guess I'm not too surprised. Like
Yeah.
I don't know, but I'm excited to hear what you have because I haven't even looked at
Yeah.
the Google Doc
Yeah.
because I have no idea what you're talking about. It's so exciting.
Yeah. It's I guess like I wouldn't be surprised if it felt like they were like family members. Like, oh,
Hmm.
the spirit of my grandmother saved me. But
Yeah.
no, it's like
Strangers
one of
sometimes.
my stories, this person lives in a house with several spirits, three, I think, and one he calls Schmidt, and Schmidt saved him. And I'm like,
Wow.
some guy
Okay.
named Schmidt. All right. Sick.
Yeah,
Um,
interesting.
yeah, so anyway, we'll get to that in a minute. But um I have like a personal story, not it's not my situation, but a story from a family friend that I think I shared in a past episode, but I figured
Hmm.
I would just like open with it because it's just
Yeah.
a good one. And then
Yeah.
maybe I can read a couple of mine, you can read yours, and then I can finish up a couple of
Okay.
mine.
Perfect.
So really good family friend of mine. I went to preschool with the daughter, who's like kind of the connection between our families, and then our moms became friends. And anyway, so she has a little brother, and we'll call him Cole. Um, and so Cole, a little bit of weird history is he, as a baby, would recall some sort of like past life,
Hmm.
and they got the sense that he like in his past life he died like as a baby or as like a
Hmm.
toddler. So he would talk
Right.
about like, no, like before, like he would say something and he'd be like in a high chair like saying stuff, and the
Hmm.
mom would be like, Cole, like what do you mean? Like he'd be like, oh yeah, like when I would do this with my mom, and she's like,
Hmm.
what do mean, sweetie?"
I'm
And
your
he'd be
mom.
like, "No, not you, like from before, my mom from
Hmm.
before."
Hmm.
And she's just
That's
like,
so
"Huh?"
weird.
Super weird. And I think they may have connected it to some like actual like tragedy that happened maybe like locally where like
Whoa.
a parent like backed up onto a stroller kind of
Mm.
vibe, like very,
Yeah.
very, very tragic and just like a horrifying thought.
Hmm.
Um, anyway, I don't want to like go down that path because I'm not 100% sure, but I think they had like some weird sense that they kind of knew maybe who he was before. So
Hmm.
anyway, that was weird. But so that kind of stopped. Like he
Yeah.
sort of grew out of that. And so I think that stopped when he was probably like 4 or 5. But this happened when he was, I think, like 6, maybe.
Hmm.
Um, he was it's the same little boy, Cole. Um, he was outside on his bike, and where they lived at the time was like a suburb outside of San Francisco, but it was like very much one of those like I don't know what they're even called. Like it's like a little village. It's like townhouses. They're not townhouses. They're full ass like really nice houses, but they're like a development like
Yeah.
area.
Like
You know
a
what I'm talking about?
in an HOA.
Yeah, exactly like that.
Yeah.
So um anyway, like for the most part it's like cul-de-sacs and like very residential, but they were biking in an area that had like a little bit of like a I don't know if it's like a blind turn, but like you couldn't see people coming. So anyway, he's on his bike. A car comes like speeding, going way too fast down this road. He gets hit by the car on his bike, goes flying, and as the mom
Mm.
recalls it felt like he was in the air for ages. And she thinks it was like he was like, I don't know, like 8 or 10 feet in the air. Like he was up
Wow.
high.
Mm.
And um I don't know. I don't think either I ever, if she ever said, or maybe I just don't remember the mom's experience of his situation, like when he came back down. But essentially, like his recollection afterwards was like, an angel saved me. And the mom was like,
Mm.
"What do you mean?" And he's like,
Mm.
I just I saw an angel, like I saw this light and then I saw this angel and it like caught me before I fell and like gently placed me down. He had like no major injuries. He
Yeah.
was, he was hit by a
That's
car going like 30.
yeah.
Like something really weird happened there and they like
Hmm.
were like what the hell, like. And
Yeah.
I do think maybe the mom, if I'm remembering this correctly, the mom said something like he fell in a way that like didn't really make sense to her, like in her head, like it
Hmm.
was like he didn't smack, like his head didn't smack on the pavement. It was like
Hmm.
just kind of like dropped. I don't
Flopped.
know.
Hmm.
Yeah, like yeah, gently kind of flopped down, and then
Hmm.
obviously is like ran over. And anyway, it ended up being fine. I don't think they like pressed charges against the driver or anything because I mean he wasn't looking, and the guy was only going like
Hmm.
5 over the speed limit or something. But
Yeah.
super weird, just a really really weird
Yeah.
situation. So I figured I'd
That's
open with
yeah.
that one,
Yeah. That's divine intervention
right?
for
I
sure.
know. Seems like
Yeah.
it. Seems like
Es-
it. And all of
And
these, I mean, they're
mhm.
so like they like really like take you aback for a minute.
Right, they do. And even if it's like these ghosts or angels
Mhm.
are a figment of the person's imagination, like it's still something is happening
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
intervening in a situation that could be go a totally opposite way
Yeah.
without whatever's
Yeah.
happening.
And like how does yours like even if it's like say it's your subconscious, like if it's your
Mhm.
subconscious warning you, how does your subconscious know? Like
Right.
people
Yeah.
walk into super dangerous, fatal situations all the time, whether it's like
Mhm.
gun violence and you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time or whatever, like someone is targeting you or what, it's like what, or
Mhm.
weird like natural disaster kind of things. Like I have one of those. I think it's my last or my second to last one. It's just like, huh? Like
Yeah.
what is that? That's so
Right.
weird.
Yeah. Ugh.
I don't know.
Either way, fascinating. And
So
so
fascinating.
thankful for the people who do survive these situations because of
Absolutely.
whatever comes for them. Wow,
Absolutely.
amazing.
Um, okay, so I'll share two of mine and then pass it to you. One of them is like a
Perfect.
two-parter, but it's not long. So the first one is
Okay.
just like a very smooth entry. Slight trigger warning here is like suicidal thoughts. The person does not attempt, but they're thinking about it. So just keep that in
Okay.
mind.
Mhm.
So this is from Reddit. The user is Lusty Lovebird, and the title is "A Ghost Saved My Life." And so they said, I was there, I had written the note, I had the pill bottle in my hand. So this
Mhm.
person was preparing to attempt to take their own life. And they say the background is I have a teddy bear that I think is haunted, and it used
Hmm.
to actively comfort me when I was little. Um,
Whoa.
and I always knew that she calls it she was there, like
Mhm.
there with me, like in my room. And she said that her sister also saw and like felt it.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
and so she's standing there with the pill bottle in her hand, and she says, I could feel her trying to get me to stop. It felt like a movie. I was in the middle of writing my note, and my shelf, which was secured to the wall, lasted through earthquakes, suddenly gave out, like broke dramatically and made a shit
Hmm.
ton of noise, which caused my parents to come up and check on me. At which
Hmm.
point I then got the help that I needed because, of course, they saw what she was
Yeah.
doing.
Hmm.
Um, and she said, I don't
Wow.
feel her presence as much anymore. And I'm actually pretty skeptical. So I went back and put the shelf back the same way that it was before. And I put all of my body weight on the shelf and it didn't move. It was like
Hmm.
one shelf just like dislodged because it seems like the spirit like pushed it off.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh. Wow.
after sensing like it's trying to get her to stop, and it's like, okay, this isn't working. I'm getting your parents.
Yeah.
So yeah, she says I pushed down as hard as I could. It didn't move at all. My parents might think I'm crazy, but I know it was her who saved me.
Hmm.
So
Wow.
it's just like, yeah. So she says, because of her, I'm still alive without a shadow of a doubt. I'll always
Hmm.
keep her. Um, and even if I have kids, I don't think I'd let them have it. Like she's too precious to me.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh.
LOL.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like an interesting kind of soft start.
Yeah.
Um,
Wait, this was a doll or what was it
it was like a
again?
teddy bear, like a
A
teddy
teddy
bear.
bear. That's right.
Hmm.
Okay. Oh. Wow, that's
Yeah,
incredible.
I
I
know.
love
That's
that one.
amazing. Yes, it's like
Mhm.
haunted dolls, but like gone good.
Good. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very good. Mhm.
very good. Okay, so the next one is from the same user, but two separate instances. This one is wild. The first one especially is wild.
Okay. Ooh.
Um, so it's from Daitashi. So they say I grew up on a horse farm, couple of barns, creepy old mill from when the past owner had cows, an extra creepy basement, and a two-story farmhouse that was about 100 years old, give or take a decade. Two separate occasions, I'm pretty sure a ghost saved my life.
Mhm.
The first was a stormy night. I went to bed like normal, not a care in the world. Storms didn't really bother me. But that night, something woke me up. I could have sworn someone had been calling out my name. I blearily
Mhm.
woke up and called out hello and listened for a bit before dozing off again. I then felt like my name was shouted right in my ear, and I shot up like a rocket, the hair on my arms standing on end. There was no one in my room, and so I freaked out. I scooted to the end of my bed, turned on my bedside lamp, and listened hard for whoever had said that. This old house was creaky as hell, and it was hard to even stand in one spot without something creaking or squeaking. And there was a loud crash at this point of breaking glass, and I screamed, leaping out of bed and sprinting downstairs.
Mhm.
My dad met me halfway, woken up by my scream, and I said, Something's in my room, on the verge of tears. He ran upstairs and then ran back down to me and started checking me over. I was confused as hell and asked if he found who it was or what it was, and he just asked, oh, Are you okay? Over and over again. Turns out a big dead branch had broken off of the tree in front of our house. The wind
Mhm.
threw it right through my window, skewering my pillow and the top of my mattress.
Oh my god.
Had I
Whoa.
not woken up and moved away from the window, I absolutely would be dead.
Yeah.
Like chills, dude.
Yeah. Oh my god. That's crazy.
And not just like on the bed, like through the pillow.
Yeah. Yeah, she would have been
Your head
skewered. Yeah. Oh
skewered.
god. Oh, wow.
How crazy is
Amazing.
that? I know,
Yeah.
incredible.
Mhm.
Okay, second
Ugh.
story,
Yeah.
and then I'm gonna take a break and pass it to you because I'm
Wait,
so
this
excited
is
to hear
from
yours.
yeah, this is from the same
Same,
person?
yeah, same person, same person.
Okay. Wow.
So they say my dad and uncle were re-walling the inside of the hayloft with huge sheets of plywood. I was probably around 11 at the time, but I had gotten it into my head that I could help. The plywood
Typical.
was easily twice as tall as I was, but I figured if I could keep it upright, I could scoot it along the ground. So, which logical.
Mhm.
Dad and my uncle weren't paying much attention to me, so I tried pulling one of the 10 ish chunks of wood off the wall. Bad plan. The first
Mhm.
board shifted and pushed the bottom of the other plywood board further into the wall, making them all tip over toward me. So it's like a domino effect of them
Yeah.
getting like the bottom getting squished towards the wall, the top's tipping. I tripped backwards and landed on my butt, looking up at this wall of wood tipping towards me. And I was certain I was going to die, like it was going to hit me and hit me in the head and squish me. And my
Mhm.
first instinct was to try to scramble away. But then I heard someone yell my name, and the voice told me to lay down, to lay as flat as I could. But I did, thinking that's stupid, I'll be crushed. But the voice sounded like an adult's voice. And so I
Hmm.
listened. The pile of plywood crashed over me, and I heard my dad shriek my name. And lo and behold, I was unharmed. I was pinned into
Hmm.
place by plywood and a little scuffed up, but not dead. The plywood was long enough that the top of the sheets caught on a small pile of pallets behind me, leaving a tiny
Hmm.
wedge of space that my body barely fit inside. I couldn't move at all until my dad and uncle lifted the plywood and pulled me out. Um, but the worst injury I had was on my butt from tripping and falling backwards. I got
Hmm.
yelled at for being careless, asked if I had a death wish laying down like that in front of a pile of falling wood. But I survived. So it's just like
Wow.
weird. Not as
Yeah.
like spooky and like powerful as the first one, but weird. Like who is this person like telling them what to do? Because the dad doesn't even
Right.
notice until it's done. Like the
Right.
wood's already down. So it's like
Yeah.
who told them to do that? It's
Right.
weird.
And is it the same voice in both
Yeah, I don't
situations?
know.
That
I
would
don't know.
be interesting.
Very interesting. I know.
Hmm.
It's very weird. So,
Wow.
anywho, over to you.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage also to listen to that voice because I
Yeah,
feel
your
like some people
instincts.
might, yeah, tend to be like, no, like I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lay down, try to run
no.
away instead. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very interesting.
yeah.
Hmm.
Super interesting.
Oh boy. Well, okay.
Mm.
Mine is a bit long
I
and
love
it needs some trigger warnings as well for,
it.
um, let's see, domestic violence
Oh.
and suicide. So,
Mm.
all right. So, this is the story of Eilish Poe. She is a young woman. She recently shared her story on a podcast called Otherworld. And the since being on the podcast, there have been a lot of news articles written about her, mostly in like tabloids and stuff. But her
Yeah.
story is pretty phenomenal. So, um, in November 2020, Eilish came home as normal. Um, there was only one thing that was out of the ordinary, and it was that the basement door, which usually is closed, was open. But she didn't really think much of it and went about business as usual until she went upstairs to get some food for her pet rabbit. And when she got upstairs, she was met by her ex boyfriend, Jonathan Crossley, who launched into a vicious attack and he
Oh
stabbed her
no.
16 times with a kitchen knife. Um, yeah, it's
That is
chilling.
terrifying.
Yeah. And
Oh,
It's
Chills. Oh
always
my
someone
god.
you know. Like, it's
Always. Yeah.
so scary.
Wait, I'm
So,
sorry. Is the implication here that she survives?
yep. Yeah, she does.
Okay, sorry. Keep going. Keep
Mhm.
going. I'm hooked.
Yeah, I know. It's incredible. So, 16 times she put up a strong fight against this guy,
Not a
and
girl.
she was like yelling to her Alexa to call the police, call her roommate, whatever. Um,
Hmm.
and when that wasn't working, she realized that her only option was going to be to outsmart him. So she pretended to be dead. And this was more easily done because the last stab wound was right under her right collarbone and it punctured her lung. So when she like relaxed her body, there was this huge like hissing exhale from her punctured lung. So
Oh,
it's
she
absolutely
must have been
horrifying.
so scared.
Yeah.
Like, oh
I
my god.
yeah, I mean the adrenaline like must have been going wild
Yeah.
cuz
Yeah.
she was conscious this whole time. And obviously there's a lot more to the story, but like she never lost consciousness through this entire thing. And even in the aftermath, losing so much blood, she was still
So much
coherent.
blood.
So, yeah,
Holy.
she's amazing for sharing her story too. Like after
Yeah.
such trauma, it's
Seriously.
fascinating and amazing.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, so she played dead, and thankfully, he did not stay long. He left. She said it felt like forever, but it was probably only like 10 seconds that he was
Yeah.
looking at her and then left. Um, so she was able to like get back into action right away.
Yeah.
And just to close the book on him, it was revealed later that he had been hiding in her house for 26 hours in the crawl space, like waiting for the time to do this, which makes it even more chilling.
Oh. What was his like motive? Like he was just an abusive piece of shit or
Yeah, he was not abusive to her before this. He was, I don't know what the right word would be because I don't want to say crazy, but like she tried to break up with him and he just refused to acknowledge
like
that she
intimidating
didn't want.
and not, yeah,
Yeah, and he would like
controlling maybe?
yeah, she broke up with him and he would continue to show up with flowers and like write her poems, and he just was
Ew.
delusional, I guess is the way to say
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And she said something about how he romanticizes things in his head, and when they don't
Mhm.
go the way that he thought it would go, he would lash out.
Flips
So,
out.
yeah, this is one of those situations. But
Holy
um
shit.
yeah, he in the days following this ended up jumping off of a cliff and dying. And this story, I mean, it's
Oh my
already
god.
crazy and disturbing and everything, but
Yeah,
this happened in my hometown. So,
yeah.
which
I
I had
opened the
never
article and
heard.
immediately no, I immediately closed it, but the one thing I saw was it was in your hometown, and I was like
Yeah.
and I was like, "Okay, I'm not
Yeah.
gonna read anything else. I'm not gonna read anything
Which,
else."
like, how is this not on my radar? Like, this is a
Right.
horrible thing that happened in our town. And
Yeah.
it's still very safe here. Like, we don't have that
Yeah.
much crime. So
It's
I'm
just like
just,
one random violent guy, you know, I mean, that's
mhm,
not like a crime
a serial
indicator,
killer.
you know, it's just
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like one scary dude, but when did this
Yeah.
happen?
2020.
Oh,
So
shit.
I was living here again at that point because it was
Right.
late 2020. So yeah,
That's
I don't know.
wild. That
Hmm.
is so wild.
Yeah. So
Okay, so
poor thing.
he's
He's
toast,
gone.
which is
Yep.
also very sad because clearly he was
Hmm.
very mentally ill.
Yeah.
But that obviously also doesn't justify violence against other
Anything.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, so he is out of here. But all right, back to Eilish. So she
Okay.
has 16 stab wounds. Obviously, she's losing blood, really weak. She starts like frantically searching for her phone, which she knew she had with her when she had gone upstairs. But in fighting with Crossley, she tried to grab the knife from him and she grabbed it by the blade, which is horrible to think of, and it like sliced completely through her hand down to the bone, she said.
Oh,
Um,
oh,
so
this girl is a
that
fucking champion, dude.
I know. I can't, like, she couldn't be braver. I don't
Yeah.
know how she did this.
I mean, it's like, I mean, I think it's exactly what you said. It's adrenaline.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
you're literally just trying to survive.
right. Yep, exactly.
Oof.
So I don't know if it's because of that injury or what, but she can't move her left arm and she
Mm,
can't sit up. And it seems like the only thing that's moving is the fingers on her right hand. So it's like
mm.
doesn't she doesn't know what to do now because
Yeah,
it's like
she's
my window
stuck.
of opportunity is slipping away. Like she's starting to realize I'm gonna die right now.
Yeah.
And that's when something else comes in. So she describes seeing a carousel of people appear in the bathroom doorway that was about 2 feet from where she was laying on the ground. And she saw three ghosts of people that she had lost within her lifetime. So the first one was her paternal grandmother. Her name was Jeannie. She passed away in 2014, and Eilish said she was standing there just kind of quaintly smiling at me. She didn't wave or anything like that. She was wearing a navy sweater, a gold necklace, like a chain necklace, and my dad wears it all the time. It's like an actual thing that she wore frequently.
Oh my God.
Poe said she felt comforted and even joyful to see her grandmother, who she never got to say goodbye to. Um, Before she passed, she had a lot of back issues. She was pretty hunched over, but when she saw her, she was standing tall and she was just there, so clearly there. And then she wasn't. And a second later, she faded out and the next person faded in. And it was
Oh,
Eilish's best friend from high school who had taken her own life in
my God,
February
I'm gonna cry.
2020. I know, same. I was crying when I was reading this earlier. So her best friend, Vicky, just appeared right where her grandma had been. Her hair was tied up in a scrunchie. She was wearing a green sweatshirt and a choker. And Eilish said it's a crystal clear image of what she was wearing, and she was also just standing there, the same as Jeannie had, with this comforting smile on her face. I felt so happy to see her because she committed suicide, and I'm still grieving for her 3 years later. But it felt like a bonus time, even if it was just 5 seconds or however long it was, to see her and be near her again.
Oh my
um,
God.
so those were two nice ones. The third one was a little bit less comforting. So Eilish is originally from Texas, and about a month before this happened, a woman in her hometown who was named Alyssa Burkett was murdered by her ex boyfriend. So I guess Eilish had come across this story or was familiar with this. And this third ghost that she saw was the ghost of Alyssa Burkett. And she saw her in similar details, like described her outfit, but she could tell that this ghost was not there to be comforting. She was there to save her life.
Yeah.
So the look in her eyes was frantic. She knew it was urgent. And Eilish said that Alyssa pushed the air with her hands and it helped her sit up. So suddenly she was sitting up. She could feel that her phone was in her pocket
Oh my
and
God.
that it was on her right side. So her fingers were working on that
Oh my
side. So she was
God.
able to get it out. She used her knuckles to like get the emergency call up and
Yeah.
then had to use her nose to like swipe across because that was the only part of her that wasn't soaked in blood at this point.
Oh my
Um,
God.
but she fully knows or believes that if Alyssa hadn't showed up, she would have died. And she was this close to not surviving this if she hadn't come. So
Oh,
it was like Alyssa died at the hand of her ex boyfriend. She wasn't going to
yeah.
let it happen to Eilish, which
I
is
am like
so.
so emotional
I
about
know.
that.
It's an amazing story, like truly. I
Women helping women.
I
Let's
know.
go.
I know. It's so touching for so many
God,
reasons.
like fully, like, because it's like she was dying. Like she was actually
Mhm.
in the process of, like, I think her soul was literally leaving her.
Yeah,
And so she
yeah.
saw people who were already there waiting for her, which is
Mhm.
already super emotional. I'm a
Yeah.
mess. And then it's like Alyssa, like, felt like, no, like that can't happen
Yeah.
again. I have to
Mhm.
help. Oh my
Yeah. I know. I know. It's incredible. And I mean, she talks about
god.
now, like, there are other things that happen that I'll talk about. But she's so convinced that there's something in the afterlife for us.
Yeah, I can
She
see
feels
why.
evidence for that now.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh my
it's just
gosh.
amazing. I know. So she saved her life. And since this experience, I mean, obviously, that's like the most profound thing that you could probably
Oh,
have
yeah.
happen to you. But since then, she's actually had other things start happening. And she believes that it's because she was so close to dying
Yeah,
that she
of
now
course.
has this connection to something
Yeah.
on the other side of the veil.
Mhm.
So it started with she had one day, like, she was in the shower and she had this strong feeling. It was just like, oh, Katie is pregnant. Katie is her coworker. And then it comes to light that she is pregnant, and Eilish was like, about 10 weeks, right? And she was like, no, no, only 8 or whatever. But then it turns out that she was actually 10 weeks pregnant. Like, Eilish knew that somehow, spot on.
Okay,
And
not to interrupt. Oh, I'm gonna interrupt
yeah.
just for a second.
Hmm.
Doesn't that kind of make you think too about the connection between, like, the afterlife and the before life?
Hmm.
Like that
I
she was
had,
connected maybe to, like, the person that that fetus is going to become
yep.
before they kind of were like,
Yeah,
wow,
that's interesting.
in
Yeah.
gestation.
Yeah. And
Oh my
it's like, babies and children, as we've talked about, tend to be more connected to these sorts of things
yeah.
anyway. So there's some sort of like weird interwoven thing going
Wow.
on here. Um, so that was cool. She said she likes to go thrift shopping, and now when she goes in there, sometimes certain items will like really affect her, either negatively or positively.
Whoa.
She said one time she felt like she was actually going to throw up from interacting with this one item that just had a really
Oh,
bad feeling for her.
wow.
And then the other thing is that she has been seeing shadow people ever since this has happened. She estimated probably 50 to 100 times she'll see these like figures that are like kind of staticky looking.
Oh,
She doesn't really know what they want. Every time she tries to interact with them, they just disappear. Um, and she tried once finally to, like, because one, she was sitting in her car and she heard 3 knocks on the window. And she looked over and there was one of these figures in the car with her.
whoa.
And she was
Oh,
like,
ooh,
that's
that's
the
terrifying.
closest. Yeah. She's like, that's the closest they've ever gotten. And I opened the door to leave and it was gone immediately. So they're not
Wow.
like trying to do anything bad
Scare
or,
her. Yeah.
yeah, but she doesn't even know if they're there to try to communicate anything to her or what. So she tried to
Whoa.
relive this experience with her therapist to see if they could glean anything more from it. And she had a very clear picture when she was reliving it of an actual woman, like, saw her face, saw her hair, saw an
Oh,
outfit. It was no one she knew, but I don't know what the implication of that is necessarily, but these shadow people might be like ghosts of actual people. And
yeah.
who knows why she can see them or
Yeah.
whatever it is, but it's really interesting.
Well,
And
now that I feel like we're aware of so many more like different kinds of entities, but I don't think the lines between them are as firm as we necessarily think. Like,
mhm,
let's say Hat Man, for example.
yeah,
Like, there's so much stuff about Hat Man. He may or may not be a shadow person. Let's say he is.
mhm,
Maybe Hat Man is a different entity, but then there's also someone who just wore a hat in their life and that's just like a ghost
right.
and they seem like a shadow person but they're not. It's just how this ghost is like manifesting.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that's a good point. Yeah, could be anyone, really. We don't know who these people
Well, and it's
are.
all theories. Yeah, shadow
Hmm.
people in general are just like a theory. Like I think when they come
Right.
with like a bad like gut reaction or like your instincts are like, "Ooh, that's not
Yeah,
good."
not
Like
good.
that's
Hmm.
a different thing, but that also could just be a
Yeah.
spirit, right? Like
Hmm.
some people aren't good people, clearly. And if
Yeah.
they decide to continue on in the afterlife being twats, then
Hmm.
maybe
Yeah, they'll
they're
give you the
just
bad feeling.
ghosts. Yeah,
Hmm.
not like some other like non-human entity.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Hmm.
And interestingly, like most of those experiences were happening in the immediate aftermath of this
Mhm.
incident. And now, 3 years on, it's happening less and less. So she feels like she's putting distance between herself
Yeah.
and she's farther from when she thought she was going to die. And the
Yeah.
farther you get from that, the more closed off, I guess, you become, or
Yeah.
the less prone you are to
Yeah.
the experiences she was having, which makes sense. So,
Yeah.
um,
Well, it's
yeah.
sort of like, those diagrams that show, like, here's what 2D looks like, here's what 3D looks like. And then it's
Hmm.
like, here's when you layer space and time on top of that. And it looks kind of like
Right.
a tube like that, but it goes out and it's like lines. But like
Hmm.
time isn't actually linear. That's a construct. So it's like, if you
Right.
think about it, it's like she's literally, there was like a tear in the veil, say, we'll
Hmm.
call it like a tear. And it's like she's not actually traveling away from it, but it's like repairing itself as time goes on
Hmm.
almost.
Yeah.
That's really trippy to think about.
Hmm.
Wow.
That's a good image. Yeah. That's interesting.
That's just wild.
Yeah. But I recommend everyone listen to her episodes on the Otherworld podcast. Um,
Ooh.
there's five. It's a 5-part series, so it goes really deep into
Ooh,
him,
okay.
into everything. So yeah, Otherworld podcast.
Okay. I'm gonna make a note so we put it in our notes. And her name is Eilish Poe.
Poe, yeah, Poe.
Wow. What a fucking star.
I know. Thank you, Eilish, for sharing, and
Yeah,
thank you,
wow.
Alyssa, for coming
Yeah,
back
for
and saving
saving
her.
her.
Yeah,
Jeez. Oh my God. Well,
amazing.
my stories seem like silly compared to this. Damn.
Well, we need some levity now.
Yeah, you're right.
That
You're
is
right. Okay.
intense, super
Oh
intense
my
story.
gosh. So intense. Okay, let me see. Okay, so this first one, trigger warning for like a couple things, overdose, death by overdose, and then also like near death experience via anaphylaxis.
Hmm.
Um, so this is from ANZ Brooke. She says, my boyfriend of 5 years has crushed on me for probably 12 or 13 years. Love that energy.
Yeah, that's cute.
He was 2 grades below me and he was a quote unquote bad boy while I was popular and in
Oh.
all honors and college level classes. So I wasn't aware he existed until I met him at my dad's business about 7 years ago. He apparently, this is really sweet. He apparently talked about me being his dream girl and was teased that it was never
Oh.
happened. That would have never happened, which is why I mentioned
Uh-huh.
this. So in 2009, he and his best friend, who we'll call Josh, were getting into pills because
Hmm.
Josh's grandfather was an amputee and was unable to properly attend or understand, hiding the medications, thus leaving large amounts of methadone, clonopin, hydrocodone lying around. So
Mm.
lots of like heavy duty pills laying around.
Yeah.
This was before the opioid crisis, which I don't know if that's actually true, but before we were probably aware of it.
Hmm.
Um, but she says before the opiate crisis that has affected my generation deeply in the last 15 years. 2 days before Christmas 2009, Josh, again, trigger warning, overdosed in the bedroom that my boyfriend is currently staying in. It's a long story about why he's staying there, but we moved back to our respective families because we were laid off during the pandemic. We were in a car wreck, and lost our car. So lots of details. But anyway, he's staying in this room where Josh passed. The
Hmm.
room has never felt spooky, never anything strange about it. I've had a few pranks pulled on me that we believe Josh is behind, to basically congratulate my boyfriend on being with the woman he waited for. So
Aw.
it's like kind of
Sweet.
sweet because Josh has been his
Hmm.
best friend for always, and it's like he's
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, I see you. You made it."
Uh-huh. You did it. Yeah.
Um, she says, "I've woken up to sticky notes completely covering my body."
What?
Like, what a prank, Josh.
Yeah.
Yeah, my drinks poured on the floor, random objects moved right where I exit the bed so that I step on them first thing in the morning. I swear I've heard giggling, like a guy's voice
Mm.
giggling, each time I've
Mhm.
angrily asked my boyfriend if he's messing with me, and I know when he's lying, but he always says no, and he's not lying. And so we like to think this is Josh playing practical jokes, something he was known for in his life. But this is nothing compared to what Josh did for me in 2017. It wasn't a prank. He saved my life. 4 years ago, I went into anaphylactic shock. I lost all ability to speak or move my lower body, and I was upstairs with a curved and steep staircase separating me from my phone. I remember crawling to the stairs, knowing it could be fatal if I smashed into the wall that the stairs led to before they turn with very large, steep
Mm.
steps. I know I was extremely oxygen deprived, but immediately I saw Josh and two of my other deceased best friends ascend the
Mm.
stairs and carry me to the living room couch with my nebulizer and cell phone. I called
Whoa.
911, but I had no voice, and my other friends were gone, but Josh was still there.
Mm.
He told me he was going to wake my boyfriend from the hammock in the back of my yard, and suddenly my boyfriend dreamed of his friend saying that I was in
Mm.
trouble.
Wow.
My boyfriend came running into the house, and by this point, I was absolutely dying. I no longer could use
Mm.
any parts of my body, and no air was coming into my lungs when I tried to inhale. I remember thinking of my daughter. I'm gonna fucking cry
Yeah.
again. I remember, well, partially just because it makes me think of you, because I know you
Yeah.
have some serious allergies, and I'm
Mhm.
like, no. Okay, keep it together.
Yeah. Mhm.
I remember thinking of my daughter and praying her father would navigate my loss to her and keep memories of me alive. He actually ended
Oh.
up dying in a freak accident 8 months ago now, so I'm fulfilling that for him, but I digress. I struggled to remain conscious and I could feel I was fading. My boyfriend saw the 911 operator on the phone, like that it was dialed in, and my sweaty blue body. And he told them he didn't think I was breathing. And by some absolute miracle, there was an ambulance passing my neighborhood.
Wow.
The hospital and dispatch were 30 minutes away. So
Oh my God.
if it
It,
hadn't been there, he would have died.
yeah.
Um, this coincidence, plus my boyfriend's sudden premonition that I was hurt, saved my life. Josh and
Mm.
those EMTs saved my life. I remember the
Oh.
EMT asking my boyfriend if I had overdosed. I hadn't. And I thought of how Josh had died. I was blabbering on about dead people saving me after a large amount of epinephrine, so no wonder they thought I was high. The doctors and EMT were baffled at how I managed to get down those stairs or even stay alive long enough to get help. I had one bruise on my leg that was tiny, and that was it, along with the
Hmm.
worst headache I've ever had. But it turns out I'm allergic to the latex and spray paint. I just told them I
Mm.
slid down the stairs, but that's certainly not how I
No.
remember
Yeah.
it.
Hmm.
The weird thing is, I'd never met Josh when he was alive. I don't know
Oh.
how I recognized him or hallucinated him, but he looked exactly like the pictures I'd seen. I've had a
Oh.
lot of paranormal encounters, but my run in with Josh saved my life and he never even knew me. So thank you,
Oh.
Josh, for giving me more time on this earth. I'm gonna cry. And I
Yeah,
wish we had
me too.
I wish we had met many years before. I do hope he's resting peacefully, just periodically popping in to check on us.
Oh
This is a very
gosh.
emotional
Yeah,
episode.
this
I guess,
is.
you guys.
I mean, I guess I should have known that because, like,
Oh,
how touching is it for
oh
maybe
my
someone you
god.
loved to save you
Oh my
again?
god. Yeah.
Oh,
Jesus.
Josh.
Okay, so I have two much lighter ones to
Okay,
finish us off here.
good.
So this will give you a giggle. This user is named Fractal Farter. Gassy.
Amazing. Uh-huh.
Amazing. Um, okay, so this one's called May Have Been Saved by a Ghost. So, little backstory. A handful of years ago, I lived in a small house near rural area. The house turned out to be haunted by three entities, and the story only really involves one of them named Schmidt.
Ah, yes, here we go.
He's he's an old immigrant that owned the house many years ago and died inside the house. So they actually know a little bit about this spirit. Anyway, I was using Craigslist and OfferUp to sell some things that I no longer needed, and this situation happened via Craigslist. I set up a meeting for someone to come and check out a few things I was selling. The day of this individual coming over to check things out, I get an email from said person asking to come later in the day and with an additional person. And I wasn't too bothered by that, so I agreed. That night, I think around 8, I hear the knock. As I was in the kitchen at the time, I began to walk towards the front door. And as I do, I feel a tug, a feeling of dread, and the familiar voice of Schmidt asking me to not answer the door. He's never done this before, so I felt really weird about the whole situation. I agree and decide to hide in a little nook between the kitchen and the basement steps, hoping they just go away. They do not, and they begin to fiddle with the doorknob and its lock. So, assuming the worst, I decide to call the cops. Luckily, about 2 minutes later, I hear the sirens of the police, hear another knock, and this time, normal police greetings. Feeling safer, I open the door to the police, and this feeling of dread leaves me. I give the police my report, show them the correspondence between myself and the individual. Then they leave to um, continue doing whatever their police things. I lock the door again. I thank Schmidt. And the next day, it turns out that the same person, along with three other men, after running from my place when they heard the sirens, went to a few other houses and had a bit of a spree, wounding an older woman in the process.
Oh no.
So I think a ghost saved me from a worse fate.
Yeah. Wow.
Interesting. Because
Yeah.
especially it's like, they're not just coming to break into the house. They're coming to the house knowing there's a person there,
Right.
which
Yeah.
is a really weird vibe. Like very
Hmm.
scary vibe.
Yeah, because don't they typically do the opposite? Look for
Right.
empty houses?
Tea houses, which makes you
Yeah.
think they wanted to hurt someone
Hmm.
just in the process.
Yes, that's
So
disturbing. Wow.
very
Thanks, Schmidt.
disturbing. Thanks a lot, Schmidt. You're the best.
Hmm.
Immigrants, they get the job done, you know?
Yep, it's true.
Um okay, and this last one is from Lil Miss Lila Bug. A ghost may have saved my life. They all have a very similar title.
Hmm.
Okay, so Lil Miss Lila says, I work in an old factory making rope. A bit odd, I know, but bear with me. I've worked here for about 4 years now, and I've had a few strange encounters, which maybe one day I'll get around to typing up. But for now, I'll tell you about the one which frightened and amazed me the most. For a quick bit of backstory, because of the age of the building, people have told me that a lot of people have died in the building because it was opened long before like standard health and safety codes. And it's always had open machinery running all day. So lots of people have been injured and sometimes fatally. There have only been two deaths, two deaths that we know of for certain, like specific scenarios. One man went head first over a rope reeler. His hand
Mm.
got snagged on a bit of rope sticking out, and it pulled me in. And he hit
Ugh.
his head on the floor when he went over and broke his neck.
Oh God.
Um, and then the other guy, another trigger warning for suicide. The other guy hung himself in the stairwell to the loft. So recently, so we're back to present tense now. recently I was working on the same reeler that the first guy actually died on. So
Hmm.
eerie.
Yeah.
Um, she says, but it's not weird. We use it every day, basically. And this happened over 30 years ago that he died. I was on my own, listening to music on my headphones when I saw my colleague, Clive, walk through the door and come stand next to me watching what I was doing. Because these machines are dangerous, we tend not to interrupt each other when we're working. So I just carried on working. Suddenly, something snagged on the back of my hand, and I felt the pressure of the rope pushing down on my fingers in a vice like grip.
Oh
This
no.
next bit happened in seconds, but felt like forever. I tried to pull my hand away, but it was too late. And as I felt
Mm,
my body get pulled toward the machine, I felt something hit me hard in the chest, and the pressure lifted from my fingers. I was free, standing upright, and the machine was still running. So I hit
hmm.
the big red stop button and looked at the machine, and then stunned, turned and looked at Clive, and he was white. She said, I know from experience that Clive doesn't believe in anything paranormal, but he just stood there in silence. And I said,
Mm,
what the? And then he said, it looked like something just hit you in the chest.
mhm.
Talk about it
Wow.
sometimes. Yeah. What happened? Why? If it was him, the guy who passed, or not. I don't know the man's name who died, but if it was him, I'd like to thank him. I tend to say
Yeah.
hello when I'm in that area now, just in case he's there, so he
Oh.
knows he's not forgotten.
Mhm. Oh, how nice.
So
This is
nice.
very emotional.
A very emotional
That's
episode. Wow. I was
yeah.
not expecting an ugly cry on you.
No.
And yet, here I am.
It happens.
Oops.
It's
Yeah, it
yeah.
happens. Here we go.
Oh,
Wow.
man.
Anyway, well, that's our episode, folks. So something about these really make me feel like there's just confirmation of like something more, you know?
Mhm. Yep.
And even if it's like residual energy, like it doesn't really matter. Like
Mhm.
how comforting that would be, to just see someone who you love waiting for you, like
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
ferry you off to whatever comes after, even if it's
Yeah.
nothing or everything or whatever.
Mhm.
Like I don't remember if I told you this, but I think I was talking to Noah, but I said something about like, I mean, good news is like if you know demons are real, like also like God is real. And he was like, yeah, but then demons are real. I was like,
Good point.
that's a glass half empty way of looking at it, but I
Yeah.
hear you.
Yeah. That is interesting, though. I've never
Right?
thought of it that way.
I mean, maybe that's not like a rational train of thought, but I think it is. Like,
Yeah, I think
if
so.
it's right, if
If
hell
demons
is
are
real, so is
yeah.
heaven.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm sure neither of them are what we imagine, like
Mhm.
cherubs
Yeah.
and clouds, but like,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's like kind of a
Mhm.
funny thought.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
Anywho,
yeah. Anyway, have a great rest
anyway,
of your day.
have a great rest of your day. Send us your scary stories at
Mhm.
girlsgonespooky@gmail.com. You can follow us on social at Girls Gone Spooky, basically everywhere. We love you guys. Stay fucking spooky. Stay
Yeah.
safe. If
Uh-huh.
you're gonna do something dangerous, look out for ghosts for help,
Yeah. Yep.
I'm just kidding. Rely on like, you know, established channels of support
Right. As the first line. If all
as the
else
first line.
fails, then
When in a
ask
pinch, call on some ghosts.
dial a
Yeah.
ghost. Yeah.
1-800 ghost.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
well, we'll see you guys next week. Stay
Yeah,
spooky.
stay spooky. Bye.
Bye.